Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. And what I think alone on this committee view as your noble patriotic service, backed up with your money being where your mouth is. And I think many Eurosceptics in the country at large are extremely grateful for that it's been one of the things that has ensured that we can take on the establishment which seems to spend taxpayers' money fighting its own particular corner. I've got a couple of sort of follow-up questions. I just wondered if you'd noticed, because Ms. Banks, you said you had some notes on the Bank of England, that when two members of the FPC came before this committee for their reappointment, they were asked what they thought the major risks to the UK economy was. Neither of them thought it worthwhile putting in Brexit. When questioned, one said that she'd forgotten and therefore, had she thought more carefully about it, she might have put it in. And the other said, well, actually, he thought it might be a brief short-term risk, but didn't think it seriously. So I wonder if you might like to refer to any of your other notes on the Bank of England and how you feel they're helping this debate.
I think I sort of covered that. The biggest domestic financial risk, I think, is quantitative easing. And not just the Bank of England, but worldwide. The inflation of asset bubbles everywhere, particularly property, particularly shares and other things. This is the biggest domestic risk we face. I mean, we talk about the fact that with open door immigration, it compresses wages for normal people. Over the last 7 years, the Sunday Times rich list has doubled. And the reason for that is that the free money at 0% interest rate is not getting through, as someone over there said, to the consumer to spend more money. It's going directly into asset bubbles. And these asset bubbles will spectacularly unravel. And so Brexit or otherwise is probably a mere sideshow to what's coming down the track.
And so do you agree with Lord Rose, who when he came before this committee said that if we left the European Union, wages for the lower paid would actually go up?
Well, it's a fact. I mean, it's supply and demand. I think, reading back for our old economic book, that when the Black Plague came along, the Black Death, workers' wages went up 40% the following year. There's no surprise that if you've got a lack of supply, then prices go up. So I would say that, to contra the fact that sterling may drop and prices may go up, I think wages would almost certainly rise.
But even George Osborne hasn't yet suggested we'll get the Black Death if we don't remain in the European Union. That may be what's coming over the next few weeks.
Supply and demand, that if you don't have workers, wages go up.
I think where we differ from Lord Rose, of course, is that we think that would be a good thing if domestic wages were to rise. And, of course, George Osborne also thinks that's a good thing, so they clearly differ there.
I don't believe the minimum wage is a living wage, and I think this is key to the problem.
And I think what we're seeing from the rallies that we've been holding up and down the country is that actually working class people have realised that the impact of uncontrolled, unsustainable immigration from the EU into this country is that there is a significant suppression of wages. And people are understandably very, very upset about that.
And do you recall the figure from the Treasury's report of how many will come in between 2030 as part of their economic forecast? 3 million.
3 million.
3 million. I think that report's worth looking at a bit more, because it also assumes that there's no saving from regulation at all. Do either of you think that is realistic?
Well, I think, as I answered to you, I think there is a saving. I think it's probably overblown at 33 billion. It's somewhere between the two.
And it also assumes, as one of the major costs, that we would apply unilateral tariffs at the same level as the common external tariff to EU products coming into the UK. Could that possibly be reasonable? Was anybody in the Leave campaign suggesting that we do that?
I mean, let's be honest, it was a work of fiction designed to achieve a particular aim to suit George Osborne's requirements. No credible economist has looked at it, as far as I'm aware, and said that actually it's a work of art.
Do you recall what the Chancellor said on the 17th of May 2010 when he set up the Office for Budget Responsibility?
I'm assuming you can.
I can, yes. He said, again and again, the temptation to fiddle the figures, to nudge up a growth forecast here or reduce a borrowing number there, to make the numbers add up, has proved too great. And that is a significant part of the reason for our current problems. I believe the public should be able to trust official forecasts for the economy. I want independent forecasts to become the norm. Why do you think he's gone back to Treasury forecasts?
I certainly don't trust anyone that's doubled the national debt in 6 years. That would be my starting position. Outrageously true.
I wonder
if I... Have I missed something? That's not. You say it's not true? It's true.
Half the deficit. The deficit.
I didn't say that. I said double the national debt.
Because you know how this works.
I think
exactly how it works.
I think that's slightly wandering away from this particular argument.
Oh dear.
But you also touched briefly on interest rates, and again I'm going to ask you to recall things from your memory. The exchange rate mechanism, European activity, put interest rates up to 15%. So the only time when our involvement with the EU has had an effect on interest rates, it's been to put them up to a level that bankrupted thousands of businesses and put hundreds of thousands of people out of their homes. Is that a fair? Yeah. Thank you. So can I now come on to how we might leave and what Leave.EU's view is, because there's been some speculation about a second referendum. Indeed, most EU countries, when they don't vote the way the establishment want, it gets told that they've got to vote again. Do you think that is a realistic possibility, even if you don't want it? Do you think that there is a chance that we may be forced to vote again?
I think everyone seems to be viewing this as an event, which I think it isn't. It's a process. Where I differ with both Leave and some of the senior Conservative politicians is I think we should invoke Article 50 almost straight away. And we go into negotiations for 2 years over the outcome. And I think it's as straightforward as that.
John Cunliffe, who appeared before this committee, who was UPREP, said that what he thought should be done was we should spend a limited amount of time preparing the way to exercise Article 50, to see the lie of the land, allow tempers to cool a bit. You broadly in agreement?
Yes,
with
I
that?
mean, when I say immediate, I don't mean
yeah.
but within within a sort of,
but by Christmas.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
I think if the British public have voted out, they don't want the equivocation of the politicians then starting to reframe it.
And we don't want to be treated like Ireland, Denmark, France, Holland, and be forced to
I think, let's be clear, Article 50 starts the process. And yes, there's a reference to 2 years, but there's no need for it to take 2 years. It could take shorter with the right negotiating team, and I think that is a key part of post-Brexit vote, is actually who is going to represent the UK's interests. And what I think is absolutely fundamental is that it should not be people who have advocated to remain with the sort of scaremongering that they've done. So in the nicest possible way, the last people who should be negotiating a Brexit is the Prime Minister, the Chancellor or the Foreign Secretary. It needs a team of, in my view, the best negotiators from the world of business. The suggestions that we shouldn't Brexit because we haven't got enough civil servants to negotiate a free trade agreement. I mean, that is one of the most feeble, weakest arguments to do with, for the future of our national sovereignty. We haven't got some negotiators. I mean, really.
Well, the OECD forecast out today, and I completely agree with your view of these international bodies, which consistently get things wrong, and very often catastrophically so. You're quite right to point out they didn't predict the crisis in 2008 and so on. The OECD assumes we will get no free trade deals with anybody until 2023. That would require spectacularly inept negotiation.
Yeah. Well,
so it's just not credible. It's
completely uncredible.
The average European Union trade deal takes 7 years because you've got to get 28 people to all agree on the same thing, which is virtually impossible with the vested interests they've got at play. One country actually negotiating by itself is actually in a better position to do it because it doesn't have to coalesce all these ridiculous vested interests.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, isn't it, that a country the size of Switzerland can have free trade agreements with a cumulative GDP of, I believe, 4 times the cumulative GDP of the free trade agreements that the EU's got. And I think we should remember You don't have to have a free trade agreement in order to very successfully trade with another country. For example, we have a greater trade surplus in services with the United States of 350 million people, with whom we do not have a free trade agreement, than we have our surplus in services with the EU of 500 million people. So you don't need trade agreements in order to very successfully trade with other countries.
No, that's a good example as well, because World Trade Organisation has brought tariffs down. It's almost a kind of a rounding error in the equation. So, you know, you look at the potential tariffs we would face in Europe with our products, it's only 2/3 of the cost of the membership. As I was explaining to Mrs. Reeves, the currency has moved 10% in the last 3 months, which is twice the size of that tariff. So the biggest moving part is your exchange rate, not the potential tariffs.
And the exception on that is, of course, food, where there are still very high external tariffs from the European Union, which is the major additional cost to households in this country, as I mentioned.
On an ethical basis, they destroy farmers in Africa and other people with this kind of policy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.